Hey guys, welcome back to another hobby video. This time it's a kind of conversion video, but it's how I made and kind of resaved my Oldhammer Nurgle BSB from last year, so hopefully you guys enjoy. So here is the first BSB Spoilpox I made a year ago, and as you guys know, he originally came from Age of Sigmar, this concept of this Herald of Nurgle who yells and keeps the plague bearers on track for the tally, and he has this massive trunk, and last year I didn't have a lot of bits to work with, so I made this cute little mouth and I really didn't like it. So for this new conversion I decided to match more of my current aesthetic, which involved chopping off his little weird tiny trunk, as I intend to make a better distended maw. That's what these guys have. It's supposed to be like a huge anaconda type mouth, and I was inspired by the Forge World plague toads I made. So to start off with the sculpting, I just put a little bit of green stuff and I start forming like the upper lip. This section again, I want to showcase the tool I use. It's a silicone tipped tool. I will definitely make a video in the future going in more detail of the tools I use, what kind of green stuff I use, and just overall what I have on hand. So again, all I'm doing is smoothing the green stuff to fit his cheekbones, and I'm setting the foundation, I'd say, to get all those details in the mouth. I am using my plague toads again as the inspiration. So I want to make sure I have enough green stuff to work with. So when I put all of those details in, I'm not cutting corners. When you sculpt all of those mouth details, you do need a little bit of thickness in the green stuff to make sure you get that depth. Now usually you could just paint it black and get the illusion that the mouth is like a gaping maw. But for this one, I kind of wanted to put a little bit more detail into it, like I did for the toad. The more detail you do on the characters, I think it pays off in the long run, especially because this herald doesn't have any armor. I want to keep all of my Nurgle heralds pretty generic, as that is like the theme Nurgle demons usually go with. They're not very ornate, they don't have much clothing. I would say it's mainly one aspect. So for Horticulus, he got a huge crown of thorns for his antlers, and for the other herald on my narrative game, I gave him like a hood that you see Rodigus has, and for the Spoilpox, it would be the scroll in his hand and the big mouth. So that's like the concept I have with this conversion. So we move on to the mouth detail. You can see I started a little bit. I use a size 1 silicone tipped tool, and you can see it's pretty battered from all the years I've been using it. And what I'm doing is putting 4 small holes in the throat region of the mouth. I am trying to make almost like a weird gullet, and I guess the video kind of shows it more. By putting these 4 holes forming like a square shape, it gives me a rough idea where then I can drag the tool, as you can see, straight down, adding almost like, I'm not sure what the medical term is or the anatomy term, but under our tongues we have that little bit of, I guess, like flesh connecting it to the bottom of our jaws. That's what I'm trying to sculpt with this guy's mouth. That's what I did with the plague toads. So again, starting off with the 4, I would say, starting holes, I then start dragging the green stuff down in the same direction. This allows me to start building up that ridge in the middle and on the sides of the mouth. I just go back and forth, constantly making sure I have enough sharpness and, I'd say, detail in it. So that's the biggest tip I can give for this step, or just sculpting in general. I'm just going back and forth, as you can see, gradually taking my time. If I don't like a section, I can smooth it out and restart it, but by just going in small stages, small gradual changes will produce the outcome you want. If you just jump straight into making a huge hole, you don't have a lot of flexibility or places to change. The next element of the model is a nurgling. I kind of want to add at least a little bit of uniqueness to the model, so I took a old nurgling, chopped off his legs and arm, and I mounted it on his shoulder. All I have to do now is sculpt his hand and feet to blend onto the model. And I don't have any footage, so I actually have photos, still shots of the completed face and nurgling. I completely thought I was recording, didn't have any footage, but these still shots should represent and show more of the detail. So for the mouth, I just added the teeth, more detail. I added the lips to show the tear. I am trying to match the plague toad look. And for the nurgling, all I did was sculpt the feet and hand to actually make it look like he's part of the model and not sitting on top. I have the same philosophy I had for the plague toad pox riders. If you just glue the nurgling to the shoulder and bend the hands, he's gonna look not natural, and a lot of people can tell you just put the model there. By removing the hands and the feet, I'm forced to now sculpt it to make it look more organic. So I do encourage a lot more people to do that, as again, it gets you out of your comfort zone and will make you a better sculptor in the process. Moving on to the painting part, I base coat the nurgling in blue as I want him to be very striking and distinct from the plague bearer, and I make him a more fleshy skin tone. After that, I'm gonna give the whole model a global shade of sepia wash. I do like this color. Again, I think I mentioned it before. It just adds a nice tone to all the Nurgle colors I like to work with. This step is pretty straightforward. Just put it everywhere, just one coat, and then let it dry. After that, I just grab a red contrast and I put it into the mouth and any exposed part of the model. Usually after this, I do one more shade of a purple. I think it's called Druchii Violet. I just like the rich tone it gives to the red. As you can see, the one coat, it's a great foundation, but it lacks a bit of the visual interest you see in like Nurgle. I want it to be still diseased, even though I'm painting a bit more clean. In a style of Nurgle, I want the exposed parts to look very diseased, very decayed, and very, very toxic, After that, I go back to the original skin tone and just start highlighting. Usually, most of my painting nowadays, I aim for 3 to 5 highlights, I'd say max. For characters, I'm willing to push it a bit extra. As long as you kind of get a clean base coat and one good highlight, you can get away with a lot more than you think. Again, we are painting Warhammer fantasy armies, so unless you are committing to one army to paint for the whole year, I would recommend 3 highlights is way more than you need for a lot of sections. Anything else, it's going to be a lot more time, especially because we have so many regiments to paint, unlike other game systems. Moving on to the banner, this original banner was completely black with just a few highlights, so I go back with this paper tan color and I put about 2 to 3 coats. I have to put a lot more, as you can see the black shows through a lot, and with my new banner method I don't actually have to do this step as much. And once you have it, it should look like this. Once again, I am intending to keep the original designs from last year, but I will go back and re-highlight and fix them up a lot. This step, I'm just grabbing the brown shade mix I have. It's 2 different colors, and I put about 2 to 3 coats usually. I did figure out by the end of this video, I actually put 4 to 5 coats, making it significantly darker than the other banners. But as this guy is my BSB, I am okay with the result, as he should look a bit different than the other banners of the army. And this is what the banner looks like with the brown done and the green. I grab some light green and I put a stipple on the spattered look around the icon and then put one more glaze to get a stronger look. And here are the icons with additional highlights. I did not record any of that step, that's my bad, I was really focused. But you can already tell from this part to the last video, the banner is done, looks much sharper and a lot more cleaner. And moving on to, I guess, bonus footage before the grand reveal, the Nurgling, after the shave, I just add the base coat as the highlight, and you'll see me put one more highlight just to give you a more, I guess, closer look of what I do for my usual process. So after that first highlight, I move on to a second highlight, and for this Nurgling, because he is on the character, I do push it to a third highlight just on the sharpest edges. So I hope you guys enjoyed the work in progress, the slight inspiration and thought process, and hopefully you enjoyed the grand reveal. So guys, I am back with the grand reveal of the Nurgle Herald with the BSB and the Spellpox Scrivener Nurgle gift. And this guy was a very interesting model to kind of work around. So from my Mark 1 Nurgle army last year, this guy became a very near and dear miniature to me. He was one conversion that was back then I considered quite extensive, and I was very proud of the freehand because I did it the night before a big tournament last year. So I wanted to kind of still keep a lot of the original elements. What that also meant was a lot of the designs are definitely dated to what I'm doing now. Both the symbols you can see are very cartoony compared to my more recent Nurgle banners. However, I still think they fit into the theme, and you know, I was very proud of the freehand I did it last year, so I kind of wanted to still have some growth and progress from what I did 1 year ago. I'm not sure if that made a lot of sense, but I still think it does work out because these two symbols are very well known in the Lost and the Damned. Now again, this Nurgle fly is a lot more cartoony, but it still looks like a Nurgle demon. And to have him as my BSB, I think will definitely make him pop. So when we focus on the banner itself, I actually made the cloth much darker than I intended. I think what happened there was I forgot how many coats of my brown wash I put on. Usually I aim for 2 to 3, depending on how much I want it to be stained. I must have put like 4 or 5. It is much darker than my other banners, but again, because he's my BSB, I think it still worked out. I still have all the black dots and the black rim, and having these two icons helps blend it into the army. And I, repainting it and just adding new highlights, making the glazes better, I think it's very striking on the table, and you cannot mistaken that this is the BSB. I know I have a lot of freehand shown throughout the force, but keeping the red and the moot green kind of neon green color definitely helps him stand out. And again, I'm really proud of it. I just want to make sure I have some evidence or proof of my Mark 1 demons still seen in my new iteration. So yeah, that's the banners. The back is pretty simple. It's just my typical staining with more green at the bottom and the black dots. So when we go down to the actual guy himself, I'm very proud of him as well. Let me move the tree. And this guy with the new distended maw, I think he looks much better. Like I mentioned in the inspiration section, I do not like the Age of Sigmar weird elephant trunk mouth snake thing. I think it's a bit too fantastical, especially because I have my plague toads and how their mouth tears with like the muscle sinew showing through. I think that represents the distended maw that they have in the lore. I think this new look is more gruesome to fit the old Realm of Chaos. I think a lot of the plague bearers have a huge mouth, but for him, you can tell it definitely is like an anaconda. It will stretch out, And as you guys know in the lore, these Spoilpox, they yell and they follow up on the Plague Bearers to meet the tally. I think this guy does give that feel of like an overseer yelling at them. So the skin, I'm happy with the flesh tone look. I am trying to make each character a bit more distinct in their colors, and I'm happy I went with this fleshy tone. The Nurgling that I sculpted on the back, I'm really happy. You can see the eyes now a little bit. The pupils were fun to paint. I think with the shadow of the banner, it's hard to see it. But I'm really happy of how I made him look more naturally sitting on the herald. These Nurglings are fantastic to work with. And I think with just a little bit of work, as you saw in the work in progress, you can make a lot more interesting poses actually. And the other section I'm really proud of is actually the scroll this herald holds. In the Age of Sigmar models, he has a ton of these awesome looking scrolls and has a feather of a Lord of Change. This scroll is actually the Realm of Chaos Palanquin banner. I actually chopped it in half and had to sculpt it to make it look more like a scroll, and I think it fits the bill perfectly, having the black fade to the paper with some, scroll work and the green. I think it's fantastic, and going back and re-highlighting and just fixing up my painting from 1 year ago really makes the model feel more complete. Overall, this guy was just such a joy to work on. It's such a simple model too. I realized a lot of my heralds, especially Horticulus, they don't have a lot of armor on them, and that's something I've noticed in the Nurgle heralds. Every other faction like Bloodletters, Demonettes, and even Tzeentch Horrors, they go all out, but for Nurgle, besides the Age of Sigmar designs, I think Nurgle heralds should be simple. Horticulus, I just gave a crown of antlers for his horns as per the Age of Sigmar model. My other herald you saw in the narrative game just had a hood and like a shoulder pad, and for this Spoilpox, he just has this new distended maw, a cute Nurgling holding his back, and the scroll. And I think that's how you should approach Nurgle heralds. I think the more you put on them, the more they don't look like a plague bearer, if that makes sense. I think subtle changes make them feel what Nurgle intended to be in the Realm of Chaos / Lost in the Damned era. I hope that made a little bit of sense. I know that was like a jumble of words, but I'm just super happy with how this whole army is coming along, and I think pretty soon I may have 13 different Nurgle demon characters, and I'll make a cool video showcasing all of them. And one thing I should note why I dropped him, he has I think a nickel or a quarter glued to the underside. That's how I keep this guy weighed down. But when I put the Nurgling on top of him, he actually is much more balanced. So this is from last year, and the Nurgling is a new addition. But anyways, guys, that was the Nurgle Herald with the BSB upgrade. I hope you enjoyed the model. Very fun, and happy to have him part of my new Mark II army.